these, or we've done these panels so that you all have an opportunity to talk to people who have been in your shoes, who have gone through the application processes, and can kind of give you some insight into what it takes to be successful in these different kinds of fields. So that is why we're here. Oh, here is Jaswant. And Jaswant, you're going to have to correct me if I mispronounced your name. But let's go ahead and go around. We'll start with Nicole. You can go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your role, and when you graduated.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Nicole. I work for MarketVision Research. I graduated from UC in December of 2019, so just a couple 9 months ago. So I work as a qualitative research assistant at MarketVision. So I'm on the qual side of things, that diving more into the why and the so what and all of the open-ended questions. MarketVision as a whole is kind of like their one-stop boutique for research. So we do everything from qual to quant, but we also have an internal graphics and programming team. So I do a lot of projects that are on the healthcare spectrum of things, which is a little different than what most people would think about. So a recent project I did was international, included 7 countries, and then we interviewed patients that were diagnosed with a chronic cough. So it's definitely different and something that you definitely wouldn't expect coming out of college.
Awesome. So much for being here, Nicole. Let's go ahead on to Erin.
Hey, hi, everyone. I'm Erin Kelley. I graduated in just this past spring of 2020. I work for a startup in Indianapolis called Haven Technologies, where we sell hearing protection that doubles as Bluetooth headphones. My role is a content specialist, but because I work at a startup, that doesn't really explain what I do. So I'm really more of like a digital marketer, data analyst, brand manager, and I just launched our consumer insights program. So I touch a lot of different areas of the business because there's only 15 of us. I'm also an Orr Fellow. So because of the Orr Fellowship, I've been able to kind of craft my career in a way that I wanted to. I studied marketing and psychology and always had an interest in consumer research and just data analysis in general. So even though my role as content specialist, I've been able to like ask for these other positions. So right now we're actually planning on doing a brand extension, and as like a brand manager, I'm overseeing that role, but I saw that we had never conducted any research for our current brand. So I'm actually running that right now. We just interviewed 10 different customers and sent out a survey to a couple thousand, and we've been sifting through that data and presenting it. And we're about to do it again for our new brand.
Very cool. Sounds like that is a very multifaceted role, Erin. Thank you for being here. Let's go on to Jaswant. Oh, you're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name's Jaswant Singh. I work at Burke Inc. In Cincinnati, Ohio. It's downtown. We are a customized research firm where we're basically a one-stop shop with internal sampling, programming, whatever you need in terms of research findings. And then we also have a strategy and innovation firm known as Seed Strategy. I am a research associate there. I graduated from UC with my undergrad in 2016, and then my MBA and my master's in marketing in 2018, and I've been at Burke since. I also have a very multifaceted role where I'm basically in a rotational program. I've been able to touch different areas of the business, including account management, decision sciences, and the strategy and innovation part. So that's really my favorite part about the business, is that I'm able to do all those things, because I'm not going to lie, I get bored easily. I get to touch a bunch of different businesses, a lot of different methodologies, and then just different pieces of the process.
Phenomenal. Very cool. Thank you so much for being here, Jaswant. Let's go ahead on to Alyssa from Nielsen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I am from Nielsen. I'm also a UC grad, 2018. Feels like forever ago at this point. I have been with Nielsen since I graduated. I am a senior analyst on our innovation team. So I work mainly with consumer packaged goods companies, and we help identify strengths and weaknesses of products that are in their pipeline and help them also determine volumetrics that they may see when they launch the product, and really consult with them and figure out the best way into market for these products. I will also say I'm heavily involved in recruiting at UC. So if you've seen me around, that's why. Also, we are hiring for the summer of next year. We have a posting on Handshake that closes tonight. So if you are interested, feel free to email me afterwards as well. My email is first.lastname@nielsen.com. And if you're interested in Nielsen, make sure you get that application in tonight.
Awesome. Shameless plug. Thank you so much for being here, Alyssa. Last but not least, Courtney from Research America.
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney. Like Brian said, I work for Research America. I graduated from UC spring of 2019, so a little over a year ago now. And right now, on top of working full-time, I'm also a part-time student at Michigan State, getting my master's degree in marketing research specifically. So at Research America, I started out as an intern while I was finishing up my senior year. And then I became a market research coordinator, and now I'm a project manager and analyst. And what that means is I see all of the project, which is kind of what all of these other ladies I to in presentation phase. And that's my favorite part of the role, is not just seeing one snippet of seeing all of it. I'm also the account exec on one of our large healthcare clients, and we do font and ball work for them, all of the above. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, Courtney. So students on this call, really, the goal of this is to get your questions answered. So anything that you want to know about the field of marketing research, or if you have specific questions for individual panelists, please drop those in the Q&A, and we will take a look at those throughout the full hour. So any questions that you have, please drop those in to the chat. We want to make this worth your time. I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask about careers in marketing research, but of course, want this to be as relevant as possible for you. So please, at any point during the chat or during our conversation today, go ahead and drop a question or two into the Q&A. Okay, so to go ahead and get started, and that, Simon, you asked a question that was literally the next on my list. So Simon asked, oops, I just lost it. Let's see, let me change my view here for a second. Oh, okay, but it was, how did you guys decide to get into a career in marketing research? So I'm just gonna open it up, jump in as you want, tell us about how you have all ended up where you are today.
I can go. I kind of jumped into the marketing space at a whim. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to major in my freshman year. I knew I was kind of interested in psychology and kind of interested in the business world, and I thought that marketing was kind of a happy medium of those two things. And then someone from the marketing department came in and talked about all the different facets of marketing, and research and consumer insights was one of them. And bell kind of clicked in my head. I was like, yep, that's what I want to do. I kind of tested out the waters in various internships and co-ops throughout my time at UC, which kind of confirmed my interest in the analytics psychology mesh of market research. So that was my path for the most part.
I can go next. Mine's a little bit more convoluted than that. I actually started my undergraduate career in engineering. So I am very numbers oriented and whatnot, but ultimately decided that wasn't the path for me. which brought me to business. So then I started evaluating like what opportunities do I have in business that really meshed with numbers, but also kind of like the sciences with economics and psychology. So that led me to academic research in marketing. I decided that was a little bit too theoretical for me, and I wanted to do something in industry that allowed me to kind of engage in like implementation. So I have all these findings. What do I do with them now? So that really led me to marketing research and being able to take findings and research and figuring out what to do with them and like share them across the organization so that they're like meaningfully used.
I can jump in and go next.
Okay.
So I started out with majoring in psychology. I've always been interested in why people do what they do. And in high school, I took a psychology class, and we actually read a book called Why We Buy What We Buy. And that kind of got me more interested in the business side. So after a year at McMicken and McMicken College, I switched over to Lindner and really focused on that consumer behavior and found a passion for that. I love asking why. I rarely ever take something at face value. I always want to know why. And that led me into the world of market research. And I'm so glad I made that decision.
Yeah, I can answer this too. I took a really wonky path to get here. I actually started off in DAP as a design major. I'm more of a creative kind of person, I would say. But I guess not quite creative enough to do well in DAP. So I ended up transferring into marketing. I thought it would be a good like halfway between creativity and, wanting to be in a community of people and work with others. And then I had always been passionate about psychology. I thought I wanted to maybe pursue clinical psychology. So I picked up a second major in psych and realized that that was not really what I cared for. I actually cared more for the research side. So by the time I was about to graduate, I was taking a few different research classes and doing some case studies and realized that that's really where my passions lied. Fast forward, I ended up getting hired on at a startup as a designer. Didn't really love that. So I kind of started manipulating my career a little bit with my manager and my advisors to take on a more research heavy role. A big reason for that is because I found myself disagreeing with our management team a lot. And as a 23-year-old recent grad, I had no credibility, and I needed research to back up what I thought. And the only way to get people to listen to me was by conducting research. And so that's been kind of how I finally got into the role, and I've used it to my benefit, not only in my career, but just like it's something I've always wanted to do. So it's nice that like I found a way to kind of weasel it in.
Yeah, and then I'll speak to this a little bit too. One of the classes I actually took at UC really brought me in to the market research world. It was a research assistant class. We actually had to work the lab in the library like once a week doing it, and then got to see the behind the scenes of what that research was actually for, which made it seem a lot more not as tedious as when you're the one taking the research. And then additionally, we got to create our own research project where we got to develop our own question and then conduct the research from start to finish. So we got to create the questionnaire and find people to answer it, and then we had to write the report and present it to our class, which I think really gave the whole facet of this is research from start to finish.
Awesome. So it sounds like you've all found your way to marketing research. It seems like a general trend is like understanding or wanting to understand how consumers think and the curiosity behind that and kind of the psychology kind of side of things. I'm sure is the same for a lot of our students. So going into the Q&A here, Hope asks, what would you guys say is the most important quality for a researcher, marketing researcher? What kind of thoughts come to mind for you as far as qualities that make a good researcher?
I would say being curious and then also being resourceful. Just being curious because, as you mentioned, the question is why, right? Why do consumers do what they do? Why do they buy what they buy? What do they want? So it's always upon you to ask that and take the next step, but also being resourceful, because sometimes this information isn't as accessible as one might think it is. So you have to kind of think of different ways to ask questions to kind of like access that information from a consumer's mind. Or if you can't get it directly from the consumer, then how can you obtain that information in like a cost-effective way, whether that's through like secondary data collection, taught like a convenience sample or something like that.
I would also say objectivity and open-mindedness, just because you might go into like talking with your customers with a certain idea that you wanted to pitch, or a certain belief, and like 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wrong. So making sure you're willing to like take feedback and work with it. Also knowing how to frame questions and interviews and work with people in a way that you're not leading them to a certain answer.
Good. What else comes to mind for the others of you on the call about it, as far as important qualities for a researcher?
I can take that. From a more tactical side, I would say being detail oriented and being able to multitask. Because one, if you're an analyst and you're creating reports or even questionnaires, there's a lot of details that go into that. You have to, if you're writing a questionnaire, how that data is going to be analyzed and how you write that questionnaire to benefit that analyzing that data. And reports in themselves are super detail oriented. On the flip side of that, I typically have several projects going on at one time. I'm never just working on one, and being able to manage your time and identify what needs to be done today versus what needs to be done tomorrow is also really important.
I would say another good ones to have are being flexible and knowing how to problem solve. There are constantly times where we're thrown a curveball in and we've never faced it before, but you have to learn how to deal with it and still make the client happy and still deliver a quality report. So that's definitely important as well.
Great. So clearly, I mean, even though for those of our students who maybe don't have experience yet in marketing research, there's a number of really important soft skills to have as you approach into this, or as you consider approaching a career in this. Being detail-oriented, multitasking, being curious, being resourceful, knowing how to frame questions, being flexible. So, you know, looking at students who are looking to get into a co-op or a career in marketing research that maybe don't necessarily have a marketing research background, what advice do you have for them? Or, I mean, is the way to really get into a position at a marketing research firm to have prior experience? So kind of talk to us about, you know, what students should be doing, what should they be focusing on to get into this field, even if they don't necessarily have 100% relevant experience.
I can start off with this question. So at Nielsen, we don't necessarily look for students with a market research background. A lot of our people come from all types of different backgrounds, and we find that to be very helpful in our organization. So when we come to these recruiting events and we're looking at college students, any time that you can use analytics or insights in the role that you're in, while it may not be marketing research, if you can apply those kinds of broader picture, like how can I answer more questions within the role that I'm in, and how do I get there with data? That is something that we look at, even if you're a history major. If you can find us ways to analyze some type of data within history, we don't require any type of marketing background, and most of Nielsen's technologies that we use are proprietary. So we don't require students to know how to run R or anything like that. Everything we do is hands-on internal teaching. So the thing that we always say is we like to hire smart, nice people who can talk to clients and are passionate about data. everything else in Nielsen we can teach you.
I love that. I love that. What else comes to mind for the rest of you as far as advice for students looking to break into this field and things that they can be demonstrating to break in?
I think that a lot of UC classes are incredibly relevant. So many times when I was in interviews, when I was doing, kind of give them a list of some of the relevant courses that I took. Oh, you've already taken Business Analytics 1 and 2. You took this class on consumer behavior. You took this class in marketing research, and they were impressed with that. So I majored in marketing, and then I minored in data and psychology. So I kind of made my own marketing research degree. So I think tailoring your experience in Lindner to marketing research is really helpful.
I think another thing you can do outside of taking classes at UC is participate in research in the general world. I know companies like MarketVision, where I work, and companies like Wolf and alumni have their own community research outlets where you can go and participate in research and try out like different shampoos and then get to talk about your experience. And I think participating in that can give you a little sneak peek at the other side of research and what you could potentially be doing if you choose to pursue a career there.
I would also say, like, when you get involved in student organizations, finding ways to conduct research within your role. If you are like the VP of marketing for whatever student org, finding ways for you to lead your own research and kind of figure it out, you know, from your class, from your coursework, from your own teachings, whether you're taking additional coursework online, so that you can really have like a project that you own that you can speak on when you go to interview for these jobs.
That's all such great advice. Alyssa, I especially love what you said just about, you know, there's not necessarily one type of person that they're trying to find with this specific experience, but that you are able to demonstrate intellectual curiosity, that, you know, you have a curious mind, that you can translate data and come up with insights and that kind of thing. And then Erin, you know, what you said about kind of conducting your own research and seeking out opportunities to be able to talk about past ways that you maybe conducted your own research. So some good ideas for those of you who are in this session to think about ways to develop your skill set to break into this field. Okay, do want to catch up on the Q&A. Chad Martini asks, what do you wish you knew before starting a career in marketing research? Anything that you wish you knew before you had jumped in?
I kind of wished I took a sales course, which has nothing to do with directly do with marketing research, but at the same time, so I'm getting sales training right now. I see it's really helped me in the sense that when I'm selling insights into an organization, so I'm letting them know like this is important, this can be meaningful to your organization, and how you can like sell that in and help people see the importance of it. I also think as a young professional, I know a few people mentioned it. I think, Erin, you mentioned that it was hard for people to take you seriously as a 23-year-old. So in sales, like, yeah, you are learning to sell a product, a service, but you can also learn to kind of like sell your skills, right? And convince people to take you seriously, because that was a big thing for me when I first started. I had a lot to say, and I think I knew what I was doing, but I needed to help other people understand that I was capable of that. And so it really helps you like have those soft skills and get your foot into the door and have people hear you out. For all that work you did, you might as well have someone hear you out.
I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that before with marketing research. It's that having a sales background can help, but that totally makes sense. What else comes to mind? Anything else from other panelists about things that you kind of wish you'd known before starting a career in marketing research?
So I was really hesitant to say that I wanted to go into market research for like the first 3 years of college, because I always associated it with like number crunching and working just strictly with data, which, don't get me wrong, that is a big part of it. But there's the whole back end work of it. And sometimes this job is split at certain places. But again, like I am running the whole thing at my company. So like when you're conducting research in the very beginning, a lot of it is one-on-one conversations with people. It's setting up entire projects. It's a lot of project management, and it's a lot of interpersonal relations, which are things that I am like crazy passionate about. So it's not just number crunching. You get to do both. So if you are like super multi-passionate about a bunch of different parts of marketing and business, it's a great way to be able to combine your passions into one specific project that you know will be super beneficial to your company or to your client.
I can agree with that as well. I think in college, I always thought as a market researcher, you would just be placed in a call center almost, and you would be the one calling and trying to find respondents, which is not the case at all. And really, that's a small portion of it, and just the surveys and the numbers like Erin was talking about is really just a small portion of the bigger scope of the project. And there's so much more to it that you don't even realize until you get into it. So there's things like drafting the screeners to try to develop who you want to talk to, and then developing the discussion guide to cover what different things you want to probe on, and then writing the report and getting to present it. Really, it's all just little tiny steps along the way.
I love that, Erin. I love what you said about being multi-passionate. I think that's a great way to put it, and that it's not just sitting at a desk crunching numbers. Good deal. Next question here from Hannah Hurst. She says, for those of you that have your MBA in marketing, or Courtney, I think you said you're getting your MS in marketing research specifically, how has that helped you in your career today?
I'm currently in my program, but since my program is marketing research specific, I notice things that I learn every day that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna implement that in tomorrow. So I was very hurt that I wasn't gonna get to go to UC for my MBA, because my company required that if I got my graduate degree that I did it at MSU. But at least in my program, what I'm learning is extremely applicable to something I'm doing every single day. And I really appreciate that. I haven't really seen the return on what having that degree will do for my career in the future. I'm assuming that it will make me more competitive as a candidate, but I plan on staying with my company for another few years. So TBA.
Yeah, to echo what Courtney said, I think that like having an MBA or even an MS in marketing makes you more competitive. It gives you the potential to access certain roles. So if you do want to kind of move up the ladder at a faster rate, at Burke at least, most of the people do already have MBAs, or you get your MBA while at Burke, and they'll help you financially and whatnot. But that gives you access to opportunities, but also, as Courtney mentioned, like, I think that these programs are specially tailored towards like whatever discipline you want to go into. So you're going into kind of that depth as opposed to the breadth that we studied as an undergrad. And so like kind of those higher levels of depth, I guess. So then if there's something you want to specialize in, it's a lot easier to do that in your grad degree, I think, than it is to do otherwise.
Good deal. Any other thoughts? I think it was just the two of you that had MBAs. Is that correct? Or we're working on it? Okay. Yeah, and I think, I mean, just something to throw in off of that, I think not getting caught up in like having to have a master's degree to get into the field, but having the experience, right? Because would you all agree that, I mean, having the experience is going to be more important than having those letters behind your name? And like, conducting, if you haven't done an internship in marketing research, spending your time conducting your own research and trying to find ways to get involved with that. Great. Okay, moving on to the next question from Ben Plotkin. He says, I'm a business analytics major, but also have a huge interest in marketing research. How does the job description of a market researcher and a business analytics professional compare? Anybody have insight on this question? I mean, so we've talked a bit, no, crickets. We've talked a little bit about how it is like a job in marketing research is not just analyzing data all day long. Like that's part of it, right? But it's being able to figure out how to ask the right questions, how to get the right data, that kind of thing, over against analyzing copious amounts of data and trying to, aggregate all that. Am I summarizing that correctly, would you say?
I think I'm kind of speaking out of turn because I'm not a business analytics individual necessarily, but I think you're probably a little bit more heads down in the data 99.9% of the time with business analytics. And once you throw in that marketing research component of it, you're writing questionnaires, you're listening in on focus groups. There's a lot of other things that go into it other than just like I'm staring at my data all day.
I think one thing to keep in mind when answering this question is kind of how is the marketing research firm set up? So for example, it seems like a lot of you ladies have like a role that encompasses everything, right? And so that's similar to my role as well. And I think I'm a little bit different at Burke, where not everyone has a role like me, where I'm moving through different fields. A lot of people just own one vertical. So a lot of my peers are in just account management. So like that's what they're doing, like the organization, running the project, designing the questionnaire. And then you have some people who do something that's similar to business analytics, where they're in decision sciences and they are taking the data, just like right when they get the data, that's when they enter the research process. And they are, reporting that, analyzing that, running the analyses and whatnot. And so they are a little bit more head down in the data, similar to a business analyst within the marketing research, supplier world, which might compare a little bit more closely to a traditional analyst role than like a traditional marketing researcher role, where you're doing everything at once.
Good deal. Any other insight on that? Yeah, I think Erin, were you going to say something? No, just kidding.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I applied for so many market research positions, and I ended up like getting to the very last part of the application process and then not making it. And then when I saw who got the job, it almost always went to someone with a BANA degree. Which was so frustrating because I was like, I'm interested in like the marketing aspect of market research, which just goes to show how important working with data is when you want to get a market research position. But then again, kind of echoing what everyone else said, once you get into the role, there is a lot that has to do strictly with marketing. It's understanding the people, it's understanding, secondary research that's already been done about the market before you get into that number crunching. So I would say as a business analytics major, you have a really great shot at getting a market research job. But just know that you will be doing more of that project management as well.
Great insight, everybody. Thank you. Okay, next question. Also, another shameless plug for the Q&A. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to write those in and submit them to us, and we will get to your questions. Next one is from James Ray. What certificates would you say are relevant for students looking to obtain a role in marketing research? Any certifications that you feel like would be particularly helpful?
I just got my Tableau certification. My company doesn't use Tableau necessarily, but my graduate program just recommended it to have on my resume. The one that I have doesn't expire. So that's always a good one to have, just because I know that's a platform that's really common in the industry.
Yeah, I think anything with like data visualization could be helpful, depending on which marketing research company you're at and like how into the data and whatnot you are. And then also maybe something with like graphic design. I have definitely seen potential in getting a like Photoshop certification or just like a small graphic design one, because that was an area for me where I struggled a lot. Wasn't very good at graphic design when I first started, and I wish I studied something around that.
Yeah,
So-
actually, oh, sorry, Brian, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to kind of piggyback off of that, Jaswant, and asking you, so you're all collecting data, aggregating it, telling a story, kind of, trying to get an insight into how consumers are behaving. How much of that data is then visualized by you as the marketing researcher? How do you have to design it, present it? Like what all is involved?
Yeah, so in the decision sciences role, when you get the data and whatnot, you basically put all of it together. So I'm visualizing and I'm deciding like what's the best format and best way to communicate this data based on the graph, or like if it's an infographic or whatever the deliverable is. I do have help in like filling out the data, but I get to choose like what the template looks like before I pass it on to someone to like the production team where they're entering the data, and then ultimately doing the storytelling and like the visual part of it and tying that all together.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That's great to know. I was just curious. Because when you said Photoshop, I was like, it kind of struck me. Were you going to say something, Jaswant?
Well, I was just going to say a lot of the time, even on the front end, when you're setting up or working with clients, they're going to have products and like stimuli and stuff, sending you photos. A lot of the time you need to like pull out the background or make it like, more obvious. Or if you're doing something that's like a concept test, you are designing this hypothetical product, right?
Yeah.
In a way where people aren't biased to the product because of the shape and whatnot, right? So like that's where Photoshop kind of helps.
Totally makes sense. Got it. Thank you. Erin, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to kind of echo that too. So like I said, I got hired on actually as a designer, and I've been really trying to move away from that role. But as part of like this consumer insights program, we're doing a lot of testing for like new taglines, new ways of like showing our product, new kinds of photography. And I am the person who is setting up all of those like advertisements that we want to test out. I also am creating like all of our sales sheets for our retail team, and then testing those out between like Lowe's and Home Depot. And then analyzing all of that data and trying to find a way to visualize it. So I wouldn't say that a large portion of my role is design as part of like this market research position, but I would say like 20% of my role is creating the graphics to send out to people to test, and then also taking that data and trying to visualize it in a way that my management team can understand.
Got it. Thank you, Erin. Helpful to know that the creative side of everything comes in handy as well. Any other thoughts on that question as far as certifications or other relevant skills to have on your resume?
I have a quick thought on that. Yeah. So I think it's really going to vary on what you want to do within the market research world. So I'm much more data heavy. I don't do anything with graphics presentation wise. All of that is standardized within Nielsen. We have templates that are created for us, and then we just populate it with the data and then tell the story. So in my case, anything more data analytics heavy would be great. We don't need to focus as much on the creative side. So I think that really comes down to figuring out what you as an individual is interested in within the market research world, because there are so many different facets of it.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that, Alyssa. Any other thoughts before we jump on to the next question about any other certification skills that you think are relevant? Okay. Next question from Chad. Where is the line drawn between consumer insights and marketing research, or are they pretty much the same thing? Interesting question. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like consumer insights is almost applied to marketing research, if that makes sense. You use consumer insights to analyze the data. You use consumer insights to kind of think from the consumer's mind of what kind of questions I should include in this questionnaire to best get at my research question. So I wouldn't necessarily say consumer insights equals marketing research. I would say that you use consumer insights within marketing research, if that makes sense. If anyone wants to piggyback off of that, take it away.
I would agree with that. I think consumer insights is a part of market research. It's almost like the findings in the executive summary in a report, and then you build off of that. So I definitely think consumer insights kind of falls underneath the bigger umbrella of market research.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think from the perspective of if you're looking at like department names, I do think those are interchangeable. Like companies will call it the marketing research department or call it the consumer insights, if that's what you're looking for in terms of a job search. I would venture to say that you can look for the same roles within those two departments if you do see that at different companies. But I agree. I definitely think consumer insights is very much like the voice of the consumer, which is part of marketing research, which can include like secondary data or data on the market, buying trends, etc.
Great. Okay. Moving on to the next question from Hope. Did any of you have experience in marketing research before graduation? Or was your first experience in marketing research? Who wants to start? Oh, Courtney, go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like I keep answering first. Erin, you go.
Okay, I just feel as like a recent grad should probably take this one. So I did have experience in market research, but it definitely wasn't traditional. My co-ops did not expose me much to like the market research industry at all. So I had to find ways to really make sure that I got that experience. So part of that came from my psychology degree. Like you do conduct research, and I made sure that when I picked projects, they were more related to business than they were anything else. And then as I took on roles in student orgs, I made sure to like conduct research as my role, which I kind of mentioned before. And then also whenever case competitions or case studies come around, like just sign up for them. It's a short project. It usually doesn't last the entire year. And you can really become exposed to the full gamut of market research.
Like I said previously, I hopped into the market research boat very early on in my undergrad career. The summer after my freshman year, I had a short internship in marketing research in Louisville. After that, I was on co-op for a spring and a summer semester at Illumination Research in Mason. After that, I did a short internship in Chicago with the Connell Group. That was just like 10 weeks, I think, but it was fun to be in a different city for that stint of time. I worked for a sample aggregator called EMI Sampling for about a year part-time, honestly, before I jumped over to where I am now for my internship with the knowledge that I would be starting full-time after I graduated. So I very purposefully looked for market research roles when I was looking for internships and co-ops.
I can speak to this. I think I had 3 internships prior to being in my full-time position I am in now, and none of them actually had anything to do with research. They were marketing based, so I was mainly doing social media, or one of them I like designed a web page. So I think that was definitely different. So ending up in the research world was definitely a different path. But I think from those internships, there were still little pieces throughout it where I was doing research and just didn't realize it. For one of them, I helped organize things that we would take to the trade shows. So we had to figure out, okay, well, how do we want to display ourselves? What do we want to put out? How do we want to talk about the job? So there were still things throughout the experience, even though they weren't research focused, that was research, even though I didn't realize it.
That's
I
great.
can jump in here too with my experiences. So I only had one internship prior to starting full time. So if everybody is like intimidated by all these, like, oh, I had like 3 co-ops, 3 internships. Don't be, it's okay. I also, at my time at Lindner, was an RA for the marketing research lab. And that was very valuable as well. So we learned a lot of questionnaire writing and things like that, and kind of how to process data on the back end. So I did that my senior year. And then my senior year, I also interned at a company called ACO Brands up in Dayton as a marketing insights intern. So that was a really unique switch because we actually at ACO used Nielsen as a data provider. So then I got to see, when I started at Nielsen, like the opposite side that I saw in my internship. And I will say I like the side I'm in much better. I get to see a lot of different industries. So ACO Brands does a lot of paper goods, like school supplies, things like that. And that got really boring after seeing like 2 different types of notebooks. It's like, great, I've seen them all. So getting to see a lot of different types of products, different industries at Nielsen was definitely a lot more exciting. So it's definitely quality over quantity when it comes to internships, and just any type of work experience you can get that you can apply intellectual curiosity to.
Did we hear from you on this? Do you want to share your experience prior?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I started out in engineering. So I had a few engineering co-ops first. So I started at P&G with that actually. And so I was able to kind of make a move within the organization that got me more research oriented, where I ended up in R&D, which is a little bit more sciencey, but I was definitely doing some marketing research within that. And then ended up in P&G's marketing department doing branding and marketing research. And then from that point, I kind of realized I had a lot of B2C experience, and I wanted to do something that was a little bit more diverse, where it's like B2B. So I started interning at Cintas for about 1.5 years, and I did a couple of general marketing research projects and then some market sizing projects for them, which was very secondary research oriented. But as I started my graduate degree, I think the biggest thing that helped me get into research was being an RA. And I think someone mentioned that RA class they have, so I would strongly recommend that. And also just being a TA in general. I was the TA for Diane Harden for design thinking. So, I mean, big part of design thinking is marketing research at the beginning, as you're collecting the voice of the consumer and generating empathy. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like directly like TA for marketing research. Like a lot of the projects you're doing, the first phase in marketing is marketing research.
Very, very helpful from all of you to hear your backgrounds. Nicole and Alyssa specifically, I think you were the two that, you kind of had to brand yourself in a way to use your past experience to leverage that to get into the marketing research field. So I'm wondering if you have any insight as to specifically how you did that. I know, Nicole, you mentioned a little bit about being able to talk about the research you did, even though a lot of what you're doing with social media and website development. Alyssa, either of you, any advice on marketing yourself in this realm of being a marketing researcher, even though you don't have an internship that's like was at Nielsen or Burke or whatever?
I think it kind of goes back to what Alyssa said earlier, that once you get into the marketing field, they can teach you the skills. You just have to be willing. So I think a lot of times while I was talking and interviewing with jobs, I would speak about how I made decisions and how if I ran into a problem, this is how I solved it. And even though I didn't have specific market research experience, learning how to talk about the experience I did have and how it benefited me will help you when you get to the real market research world.
That's great. Thank you for that, Nicole. Any other thoughts on your end, Alyssa?
Yeah, I can actually share an example I vividly remember giving in my Nielsen interview.
Yes.
So I worked retail part-time throughout college, and I was an assistant manager of a retail store at 18. So I wasn't taken super seriously by the manager. And this is super petty, like super nerdy too, but she kept changing the radio station in the store when I wasn't there. And I told her that based on the clientele we should be listening to other radio stations. And she kept arguing with me, and I said, okay, fine, we're gonna do a marketing research study here, pretty much. And so I changed the station, and I literally got customers to agree to take a survey. And I would get their email, and I sent them a survey, and I asked like how the music was affecting their shopping trip and which they would rather listen to. And I won, and we started listening to different radio stations and what my manager had been playing previously.
I love that story. That's amazing. And that's a great example of like, so that was not in any way, shape, or form related to marketing research, but you still were able
Exactly.
to use skills in that. And then
I was able to prove myself with data, and you can't argue with data.
Love that. Oh, that's great. I'm going to use that story with students.
Take it and run with it.
Okay, another question from Jake. By the way, students, we are running out of time, so if you have any other questions that you want to ask, be sure to submit those soon. Jake asks, when looking for a potential candidate, how important are technical skills compared to soft skills? We touched a little bit about this, but anything else to add as far as technical versus soft skills? Because we've mentioned, being a curious thinker and being able to work well with people and, think outside the box as far as how to get the right data. Any other thoughts to add on the importance of technical skills versus soft skills?
I just want to add that in the grand scheme of things, if you're applying to entry-level positions, which is probably what you're applying to, they're not expecting you to walk in knowing how to analyze survey data. Most of them are not expecting you to do that. Some may, but I never interviewed anywhere, and I did a lot of interviews that expected me to know how to do those things. Was it great that I had previous experience? Yeah, of course it is. But in the grand scheme of things, they're willing to teach you. And if you can tell them, like Alyssa just said, if you can tell them ways that you've solved problems in other aspects of other jobs, or even I was on the UC dance team and I told so many stories about how I solved problems on that team. And that in the grand scheme of things, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier, Alyssa. Like you can be taught these hard skills on the job. It's like, are you the right person? Are you kind? Do you get along well with others? Are you professional? Do you communicate well? Because after that, those technical skills can be taught. Okay, it looks like we've got time for about one more question, then we'll wrap things up, or maybe two, we'll see. What sort of job titles, Chad asks, what sort of job titles should I be looking for to find marketing research jobs?
Well, I think that depends, kind of based on the organization. So consumer insight analyst, market researcher, like associate assistant might be in front of those as a like entry-level job. But when you're looking at things like Burke, as I mentioned, it's very like vertically oriented. So if you're looking at Burke, which is a marketing research supplier, you can assume that you're looking at marketing research jobs, but we have a bunch of different titles where there's like associate project manager. So if you want to be doing like the organization, the project managing of the project, that's what you should be looking for. If you're looking for maybe the more analytics side, then a like in decision sciences, like a project analyst or something like that, would probably be applicable. And then also if you would like the innovation and like the implementation side of it, you could be looking at a strategist role at either like a startup or even at seed strategy at Burke.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into and just say, like, I'm going to pitch small businesses and startups, just because once you're in a startup and it's relatively small, you have a lot of room to kind of explore different areas. They need the help, they need the work, so they will say yes. And then you can kind of figure out where you see yourself fitting into the organization and within the realm of market research. Or you can try out market research and help your company and figure out it's not for you. So I will always pitch startups and scale ups, because you have more freedom to kind of move around and form your own job and then move away from it if you want.
Love that. Appreciate your insight from that perspective, Erin, really. Any other thoughts on as far as job titles are concerned?
I was just going to kind of take a different point of view, in the sense that I work for kind of a middle-sized full-service team, and our project manager roles are all-encompassing. So our market research manager / market research analyst does everything, unlike some of your bigger companies where if your title is an analyst, you're more than likely doing just that, is analyzing data and seeing things after that survey is out of field. But if you're looking at those smaller companies, your title tends to be a little bit more than it leads on to be.
Makes sense. Good deal. Okay, last question. We have 3 minutes left. I want to be very respectful of your time, so I promise we'll be done by 4. Any advice that all of you have for students looking to get their first internship? This comes from Simon. Any just general advice? Because we know that that is one of the hardest things, is to get that first internship. What advice do you have for Simon?
Keep applying.
Someone will hire you.
I know it's hard as a first year, especially since you all are virtual this year, but utilize your network and utilize LinkedIn and us here today, just to try to navigate those waters, especially right now, because I know the job market isn't great. So a lot of those jobs are getting filled by people who have already been vetted by friends and coworkers.
Yeah, I really would just echo to ask questions. I know every one of us on this panel, and even those connections that you've made at career fairs or on LinkedIn, if you ask them a question, they will likely answer. We're here to help, and we really just want to see you succeed. So don't be afraid to ask those questions, because there really is no dumb question, as some people think.
After my consumer insights class with Dr. Cook, I emailed him and asked me to send me any contacts he thinks might possibly be hiring, and that helped me get one of my internships. I reached out, just emailed like the 20 contacts he sent me, like, hey, I'm interested in an internship. If you happen to be hiring, let me know. And it ended up being pretty successful. So even utilizing professors and their network is I just stuttered a lot, is helpful.
Love the advice. That's all really good advice. And I think that's the biggest thing is reach out, like be willing to reach out to people, have conversations. I mean, I'm sure we were all in the same boat when we were first applying for internships and co-ops. We're afraid that people didn't want to talk to us. We were, just scared, but people want to help. And I think that that's what it comes down to. And I'm not to speak for all of you, but I'm sure you'd be willing to help the students on this call. So I would encourage those of you that have joined us today to follow back up with our panelists and ask other questions that maybe you didn't have a chance to ask today. Send them a connection request on LinkedIn, adding a note, and telling them who you are, but reach out and feel free to follow up with them. Carly popped on. Do you have any last thoughts here, Carly?
I do. So obviously, thank you to all of our panelists. Like it kind of warms my heart a little bit to hear from alumni, especially because I knew some of you as students. So there's that. But also, I just think it's really interesting that we spent a lot of time talking about like being curious. Like you guys are all here on this panel, like learning. So essentially you're engaging in some of that research right now. And students who tend to do well in making connections are literally reaching out because they're curious about other people's journeys. So if you could just like be curious, that's going to really help you. And I also wanted to mention, like with Alyssa's like retail example, when you're thinking about your resume, like I would advise her as a student to actually put that on her resume as a bullet point. So if you're interested in research and you're doing problem solving at work, or you're analyzing something to like make something better, like even if you're a server and you pulled all the servers and everybody wants to have set schedules instead of it changing every week, like whatever it is, like you can put that on your resume and that might catch their eye. So don't always think you have to have like the perfect internship in research, but put it on your resume in other ways. And Brian and I can help you with that. I'm sure the panelists here are willing to help you with that. And we're bringing them in so you can connect with them. So please take advantage of that. And again, thank you all for being here, and thank you to the participants for listening in. You're making this worth our while. So we appreciate that.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Jaswant, Courtney, Erin, Alyssa, Nicole, it has been great to hear from all of you today. I appreciate the insight you had to share. I know our students appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your busy days to help students out. So that is all we have. Thank you so much again. Enjoy the rest of what is today, Thursday. What is time anymore, right? It's been great to chat with all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.